Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. This time we're talking about the Smith & Wesson Victory Model. Now this is a Smith & Wesson M&P variant that was produced during World War II, and they got around. America used 38 special versions. Both Marine and Navy airmen carried them as their survival pistol. Security at defense installations and manufacturing facilities carried them, or issued them. And a lot of them went to the British and the Commonwealth nations. And those were chambered in a different 38. Before we get into the weeds on that, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. This is very much a shoestring operation, and your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors, those individuals and businesses that have supported the channel in innumerable ways and really helped make this work. And of course, as always, shout out to Rain City Shooting Center for providing material support to the channel. Now, later years, this was called the Model 10. Prior to that, it was just the M&P, and it came in a variety of different variations. And this is just one of many variations of the M&P. They are distinct from the others in that after they were initially offered with a couple different barrel lengths, but they eventually standardized on 5 inches. The grips are plain wood rather than checkered, and they all have this lanyard loop on the bottom of them. And these are the based on one of the earlier mechanisms. You can see there's the screw for the cylinder stop, but mostly it's just a very typical Smith & Wesson M&P. Now, what is not typical of the ones provided to the British and the Commonwealth are that they fired a cartridge, a 38 cartridge, that was not 38 special. It was a variation of 38 Smith & Wesson that was loaded with a 200 grain lead bullet, which came out of the 5-inch barrel at about 650 feet per second. And this sort of exemplifies the old British saying, a little powder, a lot of lead, shoot them once, shoot them dead. Now, by the time this was the standard issue round for the British and Commonwealth for a long time, but by the time this model was introduced, the Victory Model, they had switched from the 200 grain lead bullet to a somewhat lighter jacketed bullet. I think it was 183, 185 grains, something like that. But it was still a great big heavy bullet moving not particularly quickly. So let's go to the tabletop and have a look at this. So this is not at all a small gun, being a little over 9.5 inches long and 5.5 inches high. It operates in traditional, typical Smith & Wesson manner. Push forward the cylinder release, swing the cylinder out, swing it back. And as you can see, as aforementioned, the grips are not checkered. And other than that, it's quite typical of Smith & Wesson revolvers, M&P revolvers at the time. The trigger is serrated, and this is intended primarily to be used in single action. Now, it has a double action mechanism, and this has an unusually crunchy trigger for an old Smith & Wesson, which may be due to wartime production. It also does not have the beautiful finish of early Smith & Wesson revolvers. In wartime, they were simplifying, and it's just Parkerized. You can see here, there's a British broad arrow proof mark, rather crudely applied. And it's quite well worn, though you can still make out the Smith & Wesson logo. And made in USA. And what I was saying about the trigger, though, the double action was typically viewed as being sort of for point-blank emergencies. And this becomes more apparent when you realize you can't get a sight picture with the hammer in the rest position. The hammer spur is too high. So you really can't use the sights when firing double action. And this would typically be held one-handed, thumb cocked, and then fired for each shot. But other than the features we've already talked about, there's really not much to talk about. It's a variation of the M&P. It is a neat old gun, though. Let's have a look at shooting it. So the gun shoots as you would expect. It's an old revolver, it's got a good single action trigger pull, and while the double action is a bit crunchy, it didn't really bother me when firing it. I was far more bothered by the fact that I had to aim kind of by guess in double action, but at 7 yards I was still able to pretty decent groups. So this is a neat old piece of history, and unlike a lot of these guns that were re-imported to the United States, this was not bored out to accept 38 special cartridges. And that's very much for the best, because 38 special uses a .357 inch diameter bullet, and these use a .361 inch bullet. So when you bore them out for Smith & Wesson, first of all, you wind up with a stepped chamber where it's one diameter further in and then it flares out. This has sometimes resulted in cracked 38 special cases. Sometimes not. It's very much an individual thing with the different guns and different loads. But the bore is loose for 357. Now, if you're shooting soft lead bullets, they'll probably upset to fill the bore and be just fine. But I have seen bullets keyholing out of these when they were improperly loaded with 357 diameter bullets. So if you have one of these, it's best to shoot it in its original form and not try to rebore the chambers. But great old gun, neat piece of history. Thank you very much to the collector that is allowing me to present this. This is not my gun. Yeah, but neat old gun. Anyway, that's it for this time. I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you again real soon.